I'll admit people as they come in. Can you see the presentation, Yaz?
Mm-hmm.
It's all good?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining our second Enlightened Soil webinar. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on fall planting and cover crops. We have Fred Morales with us as our special guest. Thank you, Fred, for being here. And we will all introduce ourselves after we go through the agenda. And
very good. We're going to turn that up a little bit. Can you hear?
if you want, okay. I will be, if there's any background noise, I'll just be muting participants so that we can hear everybody who's speaking. At the question and answer session, you are welcome to unmute yourselves and we can all have a conversation together. So this is our agenda for the evening. We will start with introductions. I'll introduce myself and Yazzie and Fred. And then Fred will go into talking about cover crops, what they are, why they're important, and his expertise on that. And then I will talk a little bit about why we recommend adding Enlightened Soil Algae to cover crops and fall plantings. And then we will move into a question and answer period where you're welcome to use the chat feature, or you can unmute yourself and we can all have a great conversation. There's not that many folks here tonight, so it will be a good way to have a discussion. And then finally, we are just excited for you all to take this knowledge to your local communities and share it with whoever may benefit from learning about cover crops and fall planting. Okay, so my name is Camille. I am the education director here at Enlightened Soil Corp. I also am a livestock farmer up in Michigan. I work with cattle and pigs and sheep and birds and a lot of grass and a lot of cover crops. So I'm super excited about this work. My background is in education. I used to teach middle school science, and so I have experience explaining biological processes to young and small people. And now I do that with growers and I love what I do. So I'm super excited to be here. And Yazzie, over to you.
Thanks, Camille. I'm Yazzie. I'm the partner program coordinator with Enlightened Soil. And while I'm not a farmer yet, definitely my favorite part of the work is talking to and learning from farmers. I studied business and environmental studies in my undergrad in pursuit of finding innovative ways to protect the environment and prosperous and healthy people. And this work is absolutely in line with that. So I'm loving it too.
And Fred, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Fred Morales. I'm from down in South Texas. I've been in the farm and ranch supply input business for over 40 years. I have watched a lot of things happen in agriculture in South Texas. Spent all of my life down here, so my experiences are all in this area. I would say in the last 5 years, have really become interested in cover crops and the benefits they bring. And I guess that is a result of watching what has happened to so many of our soils and their productivity in this area, and searching for something to try to improve production and water infiltration and just overall success with ag, because we're just really heading in a really bad direction here. And so I guess I've spent 35 to 40 years helping people destroy their soil, and I plan to spend the last few years that I have that I can work in this industry to try to undo what I've done and share information with people about other ways of doing things. And so just super excited to be part of this.
Great, thanks, Fred. And we would like to give a shout out to Mingo Rascon and John Carter in Texas, who introduced us to Fred Morales and started this partnership that we have together. Everyone on our team is so grateful for the Moraleses and everything you all do. So with that, we will move along to talking about cover crops with Fred. And this is gonna be sort of a general overview from Fred's perspective and experience of more years than Yazzie and I have been alive. and then we will move into how Enlightened Soil Algae can help the cover crop practice. So Fred, take it away.
So, cover crops. So in between cash crops, especially in our area, we have our main crops down here: cotton, peanuts, corn, grain sorghum, and then there's a lot of winter oats that have been planted for years to graze cattle on, put stockers on. And what we learned accidentally 5 or 6 years ago, the Pennington Seed Company would send us these really nice blends of all kinds of seeds to sell to hunters, people, recreational people, people who wanted to attract animals to certain places where they were wanting to look at them. And so we started handling those bags of mixed seed and started watching these recreational folks plant them in these cattle ranches. And after the hunting season and all of the city folks went back to town, those crops would just flourish. We would get a little rain later after the season. We would go into spring and we'd still have wonderful grazing from the different mixed cover crops that were planted for the deer, wildlife. And then some of the local farmers around here, very, very few, but some, started asking for these seed mixes, and became acquainted with the people up at Green Cover. Everybody knows about Green Cover. So we started testing some of those blends and started having, interaction with them and learning from them. And the value of the cover crops are really starting to show up. We're probably in our 4th year of really promoting cover crops in this area. And the last 2 years have been extremely dry. So it's the ability to see the results has been limited to where there's the ability to pump water. But we're seeing improved productivity. We're seeing new things happening in the soil. And most importantly, the cover crops, bringing the diverse cover crops into this area has allowed us to see some things that we've just never tried. And some of these real creative blends that are available through Green Cover, all the way down here in South Texas, you can identify the soils that are highly bacterial by what grows out of these blends. And so it helps you to not only improve the life of the soil that you have, but see what's there when you start, because the different seeds are more productive in displaying the soil quality or the soil condition that they're in. And then as you can see that, you can add those and turn or take the soil in the direction that you might need it to be for your next cover crop. So holding moisture, keeping the soil where water can infiltrate. It's been very obvious down here that if you leave land fallow, as hot as it gets so crusty. And then when we do get a rain, it just runs off. It won't go in. And where we have planted these cover crops, the soil stays more moist rather than less. And the fertility, the cash crops that are coming behind them are doing as good or better, in most cases, better than they were before. So I think, cover crops are just becoming more and more used all over the country, but just recent down here in South Texas. So helping people to understand that there's more to planting fall cover than just oats and ryegrass. Those are the two things that for 30 years, I swear, that's all we brought to the market until we had some of these new exciting blends that the hunters were starting to ask us for. And that's when we could really start seeing the benefits that was bringing, not only to wildlife, but to our cattle or sheep or goats, even winter grazing for horses, because there's so many animals in Texas and so much land is being cultivated and used to feed them. And we've just really neglected feeding the soil, which is the main job of cover crops. So that's, I guess that's something we really need people in this area to understand. And something that's been really interesting to us is recently we've started applying some of your in-soil product to some of our mono crop forage production areas, and mixing it with other biological foods like molasses and fish emulsion. Just really, really trying to look at new opportunities to stimulate soil health, microbial activity, the interaction between the microbes and the plants. Just so many opportunities down here in South Texas, and the cover crop is part of it. The biologicals is a big part of it. Camille, I can't tell you here lately, studying the biological effects of some of these things, these different additives. I wish so much that I had spent more time in biology class in high school, because we had the perfect opportunity. We had the tools to study soil health. We had so much, and we just didn't take advantage of it. And we had ag classes that taught us the NP and K business. You know, we spent our hour in ag class and learned about how to calculate the NP and K requirements, and we got into some trace elements, but never did we talk about biology and the benefits it could bring us. And Sophie, quiet. I'm sorry. I have someone helping me here this evening. There's just so much for us to do, so much for us to learn, so much for us to share. Daniel, take her. Take her, would you please? Sorry for that, Camille.
All good. Helpers are always welcome.
Oh yeah, Sophie's she's always with me. She's my best friend. But we're just at the tip of some really exciting things that are going to happen in our industry, and it's given me renewed hope for where we're going and what we can do and the benefits we can bring to our soils, and improving the land for our kids to use it in the future, because what we were doing and the way things were looking before were just pretty bleak. And it's exciting to see the young people like you and Yazmeen just trying to educate and show people new things and new opportunities. And I'm having a blast just experimenting with these different things. I'm excited to hear some of your recommendations on applying the algae to these cover crop seeds, because we've got a lot of new cover crop seeds that have arrived for this fall, and it's still very hot here in Texas. It's still very dry, but we've got brassicas, we've got legumes, we've got some good grasses, we've got stuff lined up ready to go, and we're just waiting on cooler temperatures and moisture down here to get started. But next week things are supposed to kick off, fall starting, and we've even got some in-soil in stock for people to apply the seeds, or we'll apply it for them. So just really excited about the future for a change.
That's great. Yeah, we are too, and we appreciate sharing your knowledge, Fred, with our community here. We'll move into how we can use in soil with this, and then we'll take a bunch of questions. And folks, if you have questions for Fred or myself or Yazzie, feel free to jot those down, or you can even put them in the chat right now. And we'll get to those after we talk a little bit about in soil. So, okay. When we talk about adding in-soil algae to fall plantings or cover crops, there are 5 main benefits that we have evidence for. There's probably a lot more, as there are with all biological solutions, but from our testing, we have seen these 5 things come up over and over again, all from Haney tests, PFLA tests, which are 2 soil sample tests, for those of you who aren't familiar with those, and then from tissue sampling, and from a lot of farmers' eyes and hands, which are super important when it comes to feedback and knowing what's in your soil. I loved how, Fred, you said that the cover crops can be an indicator for what's going on in your soil. We can pay for these tests, we can send them to labs and get information, but sometimes the most important information comes from planting something and seeing, does it grow, or does something else grow instead? And those indicators are really important. So we're going to go through these 5, mostly pictures this time, and then we'll get to some questions. So the first one is improved seed germination. We have found with applying in soil algae that our seeds are germinating at a better rate. And we know that this is because of the microbial activity. So for those of you that were here at our last webinar or who are familiar with soil biology, there are lots of microbes in soil. Those can be bacteria, fungi, protists, nematodes, etc. And when we do these tests, these soil tests, we see higher rates of the microbial activity. We see higher populations and we see more species diversity or biodiversity in the soil. So on the left-hand side here, we have some images from a study at Rutgers University with Dr. James White. I'll be referring to this a couple of times tonight. But you can see 2 petri dishes. The control is with no in-soil algae, and the 5% petri dish on the right has the in-soil algae product. And just with your eyes, you can see how there are so many more root hairs on the in-soil algae seeds, and the roots are much longer. The seeds have really germinated and sprouted, whereas on the control side, there's just not as much activity going on. And this is really due to those microbes. So on the right-hand side, these images are from Georgia, from the plant company, and these folks were transplanting plants, as you can see here in their in soil on the left and no in soil on the right. So in this image, you can see that the plants are taller, but these folks also did some tests on root mass. They saw that the root mass improved with in soil. They saw that there was more copper uptake, there was more disease resistance, and there was increasing in fruiting and flowering. So when we apply in soil on transplants and or cover crops and fall plantings, we typically see this improve in germination, these more higher root mass, longer roots, more root hairs, etc. So the second one, which is a continuation, we have improved root growth and development. I love this photo from Megan Harris in Florida. You can see so clearly the difference between a nitrogen chemical product and in soil. So here with the in soil, there's so much more going on. We have longer roots. We have a really noticeable difference in the root hairs, and the root hairs are sort of those thin fibrous materials that you can see sort of coming off of the roots. This is what it looks like with the naked eye, which is apparent. And then on the right-hand side, from Dr. James White, this is a microscopic image that has 5% in soil on the right and the control on the left. So these red arrows are pointing to those root hairs. And this is really just sort of zoomed in. So if you were to take Megan's sample and zoom it in, this is what you would see. But you can see all these little hairs coming off. And what's happening here is that the plant is accelerating its growth. And the reason is because when the algae enters the soil and lands on the soil, it grows this relationship between the algae cells, the bacteria that are in the soil, and these plant roots. So what happens, this is where my middle school science comes in for all of you farmer adults, but the algae acts like a school bus. And what happens is it goes into the soil, it collects a bunch of endophytic bacteria, which means bacteria that can enter the plant root cells. It gets everybody on board, and then it transports those bacteria into the plant root, and it lets them all off. It releases them, they colonize that plant root, and they speed up the growth process. This is like one of the coolest things about the algae that's happening, because it's really directly supporting that microbial activity. Okay, number 3 is enhanced seed resilience. So this is where we start to talk about stress adaptation. And Brad mentioned at the end of his little talk there that, in South Texas right now, there's a lot of drought, and you're waiting for more moisture and cooler temperatures to plant your cover crops. And from talking to a lot of growers around the country, that's the case. Folks are waiting for it to cool down and become more moist. So in this image here, this is taken in Georgia. And these are peanut plants. The peanuts were grown in a drought condition. But what you can see here is with the in-soil, the peanuts were able to hold up much better. You know, they visually appear better. They're a lot more resilient to that drought and they're able to flourish. Whereas on the left-hand side, they're not treated with in-soil and there's not so much going on. So this is really because in-soil algae improves the hormone regulation of plants. And really what that means is that the algae is providing this sort of stimuli to the plant to regulate their hormones and build up this resilience. So this is another just different way of explaining this stress adaptation. But when we apply in-soil to plants and the plants are experiencing some kind of stressor, the plant responds by releasing these compounds or these chemicals that keep the plant healthy and basically just help them respond more efficiently. It's like a natural healing thing for the plant, as opposed to without the in-soil, the plant struggles a little bit more because it's releasing those compounds at a slower rate. Okay, number 4 is acceleration of plant emergence, and this is really growth is another way to talk about this. So on the left-hand side, we have from Russell Hedrick in North Carolina. He grows corn, and his photos here are showing in the left photo on the far left, there's untreated corn, and then the right side of that photo has treated. So you can see the difference in size there. But then the photos with his face, you can see how much taller and larger that corn is mid-season when it's treated with the in-soil. And his feedback for us was that his growth was accelerated by about 2 to 3 leaves within those first 2 weeks. So the plants treated with algae were growing much quicker. And then the ear weight was also heavier, about 1 to 3 ounces heavier in density. On the right-hand side, we have from Don Brewer in Florida, who I think is on this call right now. Thanks for being here, Don. We have Don's peanuts here. These were treated with in-soil and an inoculant when he planted them. And 5 days after the seeding, there was a rapid growth in the field. So again, that plant emergence was accelerated. And then finally, I'm partial to this slide because I do love my animals up here in Michigan. But the increase in nutrient values and density is incredible when we use in-soil algae. So whether that's on these fall plantings and these cover crops, here we have it on hay. But what happens is the plant analyses that we've done, tissue sampling, sap sampling, et cetera, show this improvement in macronutrients, micronutrients, and mineral values. And the cows or sheep or goats or whoever you're feeding this to know that. They have a special way of knowing that the bales that are greener and more nutrient dense and have the algae are the ones they want to eat. So here in Montana, Brian noticed that the animals stayed on his algae bales and that they were more micronutrient and minerally dense and better when they applied the algae as opposed to the non-algae treated bales. And then in my own experience, when I spray the algae up here, the cows chase me in the tractor. They know that it's great for them. They want to eat that grass right away once I move off of it. So it's really cool to see that and see that they are excited. Okay, so we're going to move into our application recommendations. So because we're focusing here on fall planting and the benefits, we want to recommend how you can use this fall. This can be used really at any point. If you are seeding, that is the best time to apply. And there are some folks who have equipment that's super cool and new and you can spray while you seed. That's great. If you can't do that, no problem at all. We do not have that equipment up here and we just go with a sprayer sometime after we have seeded the field. That could be, 20 minutes, that could be a couple hours, that could be a few days. It's really however close you can get to it on your schedule. And we will be sending a follow-up email to all the folks in this webinar, but we just want to note that you can purchase in-soil from Fred Morales's store, which is called Morales Feed and Supply, in addition to the Enlightened Soil shop online. Okay, so it is about 7:30. We are going to move into our questions and answers. And before we look at the chat, I just wanted to shout out Randy, who is in this call right now, I believe, and he submitted a question ahead of time and won a free 500 milliliter bottle of algae. And we're going to start with your question, Randy. So Randy asked, does in-soil algae work better on certain crops than others? And the answer to that question is, at the moment, we don't necessarily know, but we know that it is working across a lot of crops. So we have in-soil algae on everything from pasture, cover crops, feed for animals, corn, soy, grains, market vegetables, orchards, cannabis, vermicompost, and all of these growers are seeing a lot of the same benefits. So our assumption right now is that it's not really picking and choosing who it's favoring. It's really just working with the biology in the soil. And then the second question that Randy asked is, have you found out if in-soil can dry on the seed and still be viable? And this is a really interesting question, and I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, who is our works in the partner program and specifically with research, to answer this question for Randy.
Thanks, Camille. And also, Randy, thank you for the question. We are researching this right now. We are pretty confident that the trials that we've done side by side, the algae as a live cell has been the thing that helps it stand apart in the trials that we've conducted. So in our seed treating trials, we are looking at this with Rutgers. It's the next phase 2 that we're moving into with them. But I will say we would love to look at that. If you're interested in looking at that with us, we'd love to talk about doing some research. We do know that spraying the fields, either a little bit before, a little bit after planting is efficient, and as is spraying the seeds before they go out. But we don't have it like a dry down time to trial, and that would be really interesting for us to look at. So I'll get Camille and Yazzy to share my information with you if you'd want to talk about that after the call.
Thanks, Meredith. Yeah, at the end of the call, we'll put up all of our contact info, so feel free to reach out to us at any time. I am just looking at the chat now, so I encourage everyone to put any questions that you have in the chat, or just unmute yourself and start chatting away. We're happy to do that too. I did see, Randy, you have another question in the chat. Is there an advantage to applying at higher rates than recommended? And the answer to that is not that we know of. The reason that we have a recommended rate is because we have done research that tests applying it at a higher than that or a lower than that rate. And this is sort of the sweet spot, both financially and biologically. We are continuing to look at that rate to see if we should have a different recommendation. We're always looking for additional research to inform our practices, but that's really what we are recommending at the moment. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask questions, to Fred, to myself, to Yazzie, to Meredith, we are happy to chat with you all.
Camille, can I ask a question?
Please.
I would like for Don to unmute himself. I would like to talk to him about those peanuts.
Let's do it. Don
Would
Brewer.
you be willing to do that?
Don, you got to click on the microphone there that says mute or unmute. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, now it's back.
Perfect.
Hey, Fred, how you doing, sir?
Really well, really well. I love the peanut business. It's something that I've watched and worked in for many, many years. And I just feel like, well, looking at your vines, they look incredibly healthy. And I didn't see any irrigation. I didn't see any pivots in those fields. How do you irrigate those peanuts?
I have a 10-gallon can. I just drive around with Fred And no, you know what? It's been a good year for us, rain wise. Now when I first put it out, we were about 2 weeks without rains, and that's why I was kind of shocked at how quick the seeds responded and began to grow. Since then, we've had weekly rain, with the exception of maybe 1 week we went without rain, but we've had a couple. We get the heat showers in Florida. Probably you may not get them in Texas, but no, they are not under irrigation, and they've done exceptionally well. The fruit, I was pulling up some of the peanuts actually this week. They're looking awesome. My deer and wild hogs think they're incredible. Hard keeping them out right now.
Talk about how did you apply the in-soil? Did you apply it at planting to the seed itself, or did you spray it on after?
We did. We applied it as we were putting out the seed. We were able to, with the inoculant, was able to add the algae in the mix. So the seed actually got a direct coating of the algae while being planted. I followed that up in 2 weeks with another application. Yeah, I believe that's all we've done on that field is the 2 applications.
And are you continuing to see vines with that kind of health where you've applied it?
Yes. Yeah, the plants themselves are looking extremely healthy. I had a young man out that he's in the peanut business. He does not do algae yet, but he's kind of watching this and was quite impressed with what's going on, considering that I've spent very little money on this. We did apply, I think it was 200 pounds of NPK, which reduced considerably as to what we would normally do, which is about 300 to 400 pounds. And I'm getting pretty much the same results that he is getting, according to him.
Well, so you applied algae when you inoculated the seed. You also sprayed the algae with the inoculant on the seed.
Yes.
And then planted. So the bacteria that infects the peanut plant was also accompanied by the algae at that time. So both the algae and the bacteria were present at the same time, applied to the seed, and then the seed planted.
Correct.
Okay. And so if you look across right now, can you still pick out the peanuts that were treated and the ones that weren't? Is it visible still?
Well, I did 18 acres, the whole 18 acres, and my excitement was all treated.
Okay.
So I don't have a comparison. I don't have
You don't
control
have
there with. No, I do not.
But when you harvest, you'll be able to compare the grade and the production with neighbors who didn't apply.
I would. Now, I will not be harvesting these. I planted these strictly. This was in an area that the soil was very poor, and it's never grown a good pasture. And my intentions here was to build the organic matter and to increase my nitrogen. Following up this winter with I'm actually going to graze the top off of it with my cattle. And then in fact, one of the things that I want to do, that's why I'm interested in this and what you guys are doing, is I want to put a blend winter crop on top of this. Once we get this grazed off, we'll be grazing this off late October, early November. And so I'm anxious to see what that would look like, but I'm not sure what to put on it. Like you mentioned earlier, I typically do winter oats and rye. And we've had relatively good success with it. But again, as you mentioned earlier, I'm trying to do this thing right now and stop doing all the wrong steps.
So then what would you think? Focus on grasses, since you're just finishing up with a legume. Come in there with some triticale, oats, rye. Do you have any negative nematode activities where you might want to use some cereal rise And are you going to no-till that into the peanuts, or are you going to till it?
I'm not going to till it. My plans were to till the top of it until I met Ray Archuleta, and he threatened me. He said if I didn't get rid of my tillers, he was going to hurt me. No, we do no-till drill. That's how I actually typically do my winter grazing. So that's my intention on this. I do not plan to disturb the soil again. I'm hoping to do a winter crop, possibly even this spring, doing a millet. And when I do that, I will sow. I'd like to sow 4 or 5 different species of grass that will become good pasture. Where in the past, it was so important seemingly for us to do just a bahia or just a coastal or whatever. So trying to get the different blends and mixes of grasses. So for one, the cattle have a variety, but my understanding is that it also puts different nutrients back into the ground to help it heal.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank both of you so much. That it's super helpful, I think, for a lot of folks to hear conversation. Meredith, do you want to take Randy's question about vermicomposting?
Sure. Hi, Randy. So your question about vermicomposting, we have a vermicomposter facility who's been utilizing the algae for most of this year, started a little bit at the end of last year. Some of the feedback that we've gotten from Dan is that he's seen significantly better cold weather performance in his system. He's in Kansas. One of his facilities is in Kansas. He's got a lot in the Midwest. He said his rows are dry on the surface, but he's not showing as much stress in the algae treated zones. He utilized in soil into a light blending of his liquid product as well. And he's getting really amazing PLFA test results from the fields that he's combined our algae with his vermicompost product. So we're really excited. We're looking at working with him with all of his clients in the Midwest. And yeah, so that's just a couple of things that we've seen there. I think the algae is providing those metabolites, and we're looking at how we're going to measure some of these improvements that we've seen. Now that he's seen them in the system, we're going to really dial in the measurement so we can describe what's going on, the whys of the performance that's happening.
Thanks, Meredith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if anyone else has other questions, unmute yourself, type in the chat. We just kind of want to open this up for conversation amongst everyone for the last probably 10 minutes or so, and then we'll go over our upcoming events and our contact information, and I'll get on our way.
Camille, has there been any research done on whether the algae, if it's consumed and run through cattle, does it survive in the gut of an animal with an anaerobic situation? And then is it still present in the manure? So are the cattle spreading the algae if they're eating plants that have the algae cycling through the plant? Has there been that kind of research done?
To my knowledge, we don't have that research. We do know that the algae don't live very long. They're doing their sort of bus transportation, as I explained to everybody, into the root hairs of the plants and letting everybody off. And that's really their sort of job in their lifetime. Meredith, do you want to add anything about the research on animals?
Yeah, we have research on animals that we want to do that would take years and years with this product, but we've contacted a researcher at Clemson that we'd really like to work with to show what's happening. Mainly we're looking at increasing the nutrient value of the grasses and the forages that the animals are eating and showing improvement in the health of their bodies that way. But this is an interesting add to that that we could add to a future study. So I love that idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. The only real research we have right now, which is not maybe the most academically related, but we know that the cows and all animals are loving the algae and are picking it over non-treated forage or hay or grass. So that's pretty good research.
Yeah.
Camille, have you gone over application rates? I mean, like if you're going to apply it to Bermuda grass, what would your rate per application and how often would you recommend applying it?
I can talk about that. So typically we recommend that you're using 8 ounces per acre that you're applying to. So 8 ounces of the in-soil product for every acre of land that acre of crop that you're applying to. When we talk about how you're applying, so I do a lot of like application plans with folks, and I typically ask like, what is the volume capacity of your device, whether that's a tractor pulled sprayer or a pivot or whatever your irrigation system is. You want to make sure that you have the right ratio of water to algae when you go out and spray. And in terms of frequency, we like to say, 3 to 4 applications in the lifespan of that plant if it's going to be harvested. And so, if you look at like a typical growing season, maybe ideally you apply at seed, and then you can apply 2 to 3 weeks later, you can apply maybe a month after that, and then maybe again at the end of the season. For people who are either grazing animals or doing cutting of hay, after every grazing or after every cutting is a good schedule if that works for you. But really it's up to the grower. We all know that the scheduling of farming is not scheduling. You can't really schedule. So whenever you're going to go out and spray your inputs, your fertilizer, or just the algae, do it on a time that works best for you. It's not meant to be a stressor. For fall planting specifically, right now we're working with a lot of folks who are about to seed. They're about to seed a winter crop. They're about to seed a cold season grass or a cover crop. And I'm recommending to folks, apply it as close as you can at seed, and then apply it maybe 2 weeks later, then apply it again before your ground freezes or before, it's too cold for that plant. And you can get 3 applications in just for a fall crop. So that's really going to provide a long-term sustainable soil health benefit to you in the spring when you're going to plant more seed of whatever kind into that ground. You're really building up that biology for a long time. Even though the algae is not going to be alive in May, your microbe community, your factories, and your in your roots and in your soil are going to be thriving. Trey asked a question in the chat. What is the true expiration of the algae? Trey, do you mean like what's the shelf life of the bottle, or how long does the algae cell live? Can you clarify that? You can unmute yourself or type in the chat. I can also just answer both of those questions if maybe that's easier for you. Shelf life. Okay, so the shelf life of the algae is typically about 6 months right now in the bottle. We ask that you keep it in the fridge, and that just extends the shelf life of the algae. But the reason that we've been able to keep it alive for that long in our water in the bottle is because the algae can be heterotrophic and autotrophic. So depending on the light conditions, and for those of you that are unfamiliar with those terms, what that means is that the organism can stay alive in the presence of light, and it can stay alive in the presence of darkness, or in the lack of light. So that's how we get that shelf life. But about 6 months is our current standard for that. We have time for a couple more questions if anyone has anything to add. Any questions for Fred, for Meredith, for Yazzie? You can ask anything about the company too. We don't have to limit it to just fall related stuff, even though it is nice that we're having this on our first day of fall here. We didn't even plan that.
Camille, I have a question for Fred.
Go for it.
Me too.
Fred, in South Texas, your blend, your mix for your cover crops, can you share with us what blend is working well in that area? I'm assuming you're a lot like me in the sandy soil. We're probably a lot alike, other than I probably get more rainfall.
So what we put together, so the folks at Green Cover have just so many different things to try, so many different seeds available. But what we do is we'll pick out, like this year, we're doing triticale, oats, Austrian winter peas, vetch, common vetch, and then we add some radishes to part of it, and part of it we don't, to just bulk it up and add some more plants. But that gives you a plant from, you know, several different plant groups. And then we have developed that blend based on 3 years of planting other things and seeing what worked well. Have you, you know, coming off of peanuts, if I think that a cereal rye or oats, you know, oats are very mycorrhiza. And by adding that behind peanuts, I know here we add a lot of wheat behind peanuts. And so I think that those grasses probably would be most beneficial for what you're going to do this fall. And I would, as Ray said, I would definitely no-till it. Do you have access to a no-till drill?
I do. I have my own, yes.
Okay, so what I would do is I would mix up at least 6 different plants. I would probably do triticale, oats. I would try some forage collards. Those are amazing for feeding animals, and not quite sure how they would work behind peanuts, but they might work well. But the important thing is to try several different things and then really watch what happens, because I love going to places that we've planted and watching something work really well in one spot, and then you go 2 miles away and something completely different is shining. So the cover crop is going to show you what's going on with your soil, because if you have moisture and you start looking at what's doing well, that is a perfect indicator of what stage your soil is at, and then you can start driving it in a direction that you might want to change it to by letting the plants grow that do well, because they're adjusting that soil where the other plants will be able to perform there later. So right. I would get on the line to Green Cover and give them your area and have them mix something up and ship it to you so that you can get it out, and then they will pre-inoculate it. I'm really big on inoculating. And then, Camille, can you just put the in soil in water in a sprayer and a pump up, and then spray the seed in the seed box and mix it? Would that accomplish it? Would that work?
So that's something that we're in the process of looking at right now, is sort of the best way to treat seeds. A lot of folks, like for example, on our farm, we have a seeder that we can't have wet seeds in it because they won't be able to come out when you're trying to seed. So we can't just like spray our seeds and then seed them. We have to seed and then spray them in the soil. But we are doing some tests with some greenhouse growers and some other growers who are trying to do things like soak the seeds or spray the seeds and then plant them. So we don't really know what the best thing is right now. We're doing that research. But in terms of like large planting for, you know, cover crops on many acres, I would suggest trying to seed and then spray, or if you can spray and furrow, that's great. But really you want the algae to be interacting with the soil biology. So that's best in the ground as far as we know right now.
So I would like to share quickly, and I've mentioned it to Meredith, but tomorrow even we're going to be applying in soil that we were mixing with molasses and fish emulsion. So we're putting 2 foods down for the life in the soil, and we're adding the in-soil to the foods. So we're seeing production increases as we're adding this. And because of the way we're doing it, it's hard to tell whether we're getting a result by just adding foods for the biology, or if the algae is improving the uptake of those foods and the conveyance of those foods into the biology and then ultimately into the plant. But we have cut the nitrogen by a half. And initially it didn't, the production dropped, but now the production's coming back without adding that half of nitrogen back. So we're still spending a good bit of money on the foods and on the algae. And if we measured the offset in the nitrogen, you know, right now it'd be a wash. But in time, if we could figure out how to eliminate more of the nitrogen, and then the volatility of the nitrogen, and then the drag that nitrogen's putting on our soils and on our crops. So we're moving that way slowly, but the way we measure is just how many bales of hay are falling out of the baler. You know, what gear do you put the tractor in when you're baling? Are you baling in third, or are you having to drop the second? You know, and that's what we're noticing. You know, we're having to bale in second instead of third high because there's more hay going in the windrower or into the baler. So, but it's all new to us. We're learning and we're having a lot of fun.
That's
Fred,
great.
I'm so glad you saved sharing that news till tonight, because I mean this has already been so exciting just to hear everyone sharing what's happening. But I will say I just had a conversation with Russell last week. I think you're exactly right on adding that molasses, as he's seeing more benefit by adding sugars. He's using sugar products to feed that biology while stimulating it and seeing really great results. So I'm so happy to hear that. I definitely want to get some more details on that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great. So we have about 4 minutes left. I want to continue to welcome folks to ask questions. We will, if we can't answer them live in this time, we will email you your answer, or we'll call you with the answer. We want to always provide answers to things, or at least have a conversation about it. So don't hesitate to continue asking, but I just want to talk a little bit about our upcoming events and then give you our contact info. So a couple of folks from the InSoil team will be at the Systems Change Conference in Statesville, North Carolina. That is next week from the 26th to the 28th. Ray Archuleta, who is an agronomist that was our special guest on our last webinar, he's having a sheep school, a grazing soil health school in Missouri the first week of October from the 3rd to the 5th. And if you want information on how to register for that, just shoot me or Yazzie an email and we can help you out. And then our next webinar is going to be on October 10th, which is a Tuesday night at 7 Eastern. This will be almost a repeat of our first webinar. So we're calling that InSoil 101, essentially how the algae works and how it's grown and how it can help save you some money and fertilizer and nitrogen and irrigation, etc. So we'll have a different special guest for that one, but we welcome you all to join for that. That will be Tuesday, October 10th, and we'll send out an email with that date in the follow-up. And then I just want to give everyone a second to write anything down if they want to, and then I'm going to put up our contact information. All of 5 of us on the partner team, myself, Yazzie, Meredith, Tucker, who is not with us tonight, and Andrew, we're all available to chat at any time. So text us, call us, email us, ask us questions, tell us what's going on your farm. We want to hear about it. And we really appreciate you all being here tonight. Special thanks to Fred. Yeah, we just love having you. We love your wisdom. I'm glad you and Don could talk about peanuts. Makes us all really happy to see that happening. So here's our contact info. I will leave this up until the end of the meeting. And again, ask us questions if you have them. Otherwise, have a wonderful night, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred, for being here. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Y'all have a good evening.
You too, Fred. Talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Randy.
Yay, hi.
Hi. Thanks for coming. Did you got some of
betcha.
your questions answered?
Yep, you answered my questions. Thank you. I'll have more
much,
by
Randy.
down the road.
Good. We'll
Keep
be
it
here
up. Keep up the great work. This is amazing stuff. So, excited to see how it goes, and I'm going to try it on some of my cover crop too, this fall. So I'm hoping maybe in 2 weeks, I'm hoping to get some applied.
Awesome.
Amazing.
We appreciate you, Randy. We couldn't do it without people like you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for asking a question, getting your bottle.
Yep. Thanks for the prize. I appreciate it.
We love
You-
prizes.
Oh, prizes are always good. Well, I
for all your
got
help.
Oh, look
I
at your
gotta-
metal working.
Yep.
All your metal working.
Yeah,
Let's-
you are an
hold on
incredibly
here.
talented welder.
I'll show you some other stuff.
On the follow.
We're actually going to be spraying.
I'll include the
We're
farmers
spraying.
market.
Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Can you see?
Yep. Yep. Looks like little metal ants.
Oh, I might have lost you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you.
Oh, I was losing. I can't hear you, but I lost your voice about 4 or 5 times during the meeting. But
Oh,
I can.
Oh,
So I don't know what was going on. I had to reconnect many times, but I'll show you what.
well, we'll send you the recording. A
whoa, those
We
are
got a
cool.
little windmill.
little windmill.
So, and my nephew just came. He just got here. He's going to help with spraying. She's waving to you there.
Awesome.
So these are all
Well-
the spiders we got to do. We're going to try and do those yet tonight.
Nice. You got a big night ahead.
Thank
of
you very much.
Thanks, Randy. Have a good
Randy.
one.
Good to see you. I'll probably be listening in down the road.
Amazing.
Have a
Great.
good night.
We
Good
look
luck
forward
at
to
your
seeing
farmers market.
I think I can read lips. I think you said goodbye and good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm gonna end the webinar for everyone.